Emily Russell, and I work with Virginia Conservation Network here in Richmond. We represent 127 environmental organizations across the Commonwealth, and I speak on behalf of them and the conservation community with a few questions regarding the response to comments that we received. First of all, this is an issue that the conservation community in Virginia cares a lot about because we in Virginia also have coal ash ponds very similar to the one in North Carolina that was breached. It may not surprise you to know that, in fact, one of the ponds in Northern Virginia actually contains a corrugated metal pipe, very similar in size and structure and age to the one in North Carolina that failed. So we're not looking at a situation in an isolated situation here. We're looking at something that could very well happen again in Virginia. So with that said, after reviewing the response to comments, I still had a few questions that I hope the board and DEQ will be able to take into consideration before finalizing this proposal. First of all, one statement. The response to comments, hopefully in error, used the word alleged violation several times. Obviously in the settlement, DEQ determined that the violations did occur and therefore they're no longer alleged. So I would hope that in future statements we talk about actual violations of state law that occurred. Second of all, there's been really no explanation of how DEQ reached $2.5 million. There's no understanding of how many days Duke has been in violation of our laws. And if the basis of determining a fine is the number of days in violation, then I think to meaningfully comment on this proposal, we need to know how many days is Duke in violation. And as we've heard, there's still 90% of the coal ash in the river. So have they been in violation from February 2nd, 2014 until today? And if they have, given that you can charge up to $32,500 per day per violation, how does $2.5 million comport with that possible number? I think that's something that's worth discussing more before we finalize this proposal. Second of all, one of our questions in our comment letter was about the Virginia stakeholders and who that group of people is. And it sounds like there are 18 members of that group, but to date we haven't seen a list of who those folks are, and I think that that would be very helpful in knowing who's facilitating the selection of projects in coordination with Duke. Third, it was unclear why a North Carolina foundation would be a reasonable party to oversee the implementation of these projects from an independent reviewer standpoint. We have the Virginia Environmental Endowment here in Virginia that frequently serves in that capacity when other supplemental environmental projects are being implemented across the state for violations of state law. So why are we sending that out to another state when we should be able to deal with it here with our experts? Fourth and finally, the point was made that the projects selected within this proposal are not supplemental environmental projects. Looking at the definition of supplemental environmental project in state code, it's unclear what category these projects fall into if they're not supplemental environmental projects. And the reason I make that point is because the guidance used for SEPs it bars the use of recreational projects. And in this case, there's a large focus on the recreational use of the Dan River. So I just make that point that it's worth considering how these projects are being categorized and what that means for cleanup. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jonathan, I don't want to butcher this. I'm going to let you introduce
Huback.
yourself. Huback.
Okay, not a talking.
Not? Figured it was going to be weird if I said it.
Good afternoon, John Huback. I'm an attorney with Gentry Lockett and Roanoke, and I'm here speaking on behalf of the City of Danville. We submitted comments, written comments during the public comment period, and I want to just take a few minutes to elaborate on some of those comments and give you some additional information. As you know, the City of Danville is the largest locality downstream of the spill site. About 6 miles of the river flow right through the city. It's probably an understatement to say the city is river focused. They've had an incredible amount of capital investment around the Dan River. The River District, as they've termed it, recently launched it. Approximately $100 million, a mixture of capital investment and tax credits. So they're really doing a lot to do the river. So needless to say, February 2nd, 2014 was a setback to that, and they've been dealing with that ever since. We've been involved helping Danville go through this process, and I'm going to limit my comments. I'm going to echo the comments on the order in terms of the amount. We echo the comments of SELC in terms of the amount. But putting aside that amount, we do think the DEQ has done a nice job shepherding this consent order from a operational standpoint, and we do agree with the elaboration of projects. I think that's the right approach in terms of focusing on projects. However, 2 points. What we'd like to focus on, again, keeping DEQ in the ballgame. I know Mr. Reynolds may not want to stay as involved as he has been over the past few months, but we feel that these projects, again, need additional oversight. The way we read the consent order is that Duke can go to this list and pick a project and throw $2.5 million in one project. We'd like there to be some oversight, some review by the DEQ in terms of making sure the projects that are selected, even if they're on a pre-approved menu of projects, get some additional attention in terms of that. Second point, and again, this was raised again in response to public comments, is this concept of source of funds and double counting. Section D5 of the consent order talks about voluntarily agreed to by Duke Energy and includes the Water Resources Fund. Now, again, the Water Resources Fund was a fund announced by Duke Energy in the fall of 2014. It was a fairly altruistic event by Duke to come to the city of Danville and announce this fund and announce the contribution to that. But that section specifically says that you can include that $10 million in this penalty. So our point is that this penalty or this settlement should be new money. So whatever the amount might be, again, obviously we would be consistent with the comments of a higher amount, but whatever that amount should be, it should be new money, not money that Duke Energy has already put on a financial statement and presumably written off in a prior tax year. So in order to make that point, we agree that there's been some projects in response to the comments removed, like the Wood Rogan project that was committed to because that's the largest site of any kind of coal ash deposit, and Duke Energy made a commitment to improve that park, so we agree that that should be removed from the menu. Also, the $250,000 donation to the Riverbank Fund was, my understanding, has been removed. But we think we go farther by just striking that section D5 in terms of not allowing any kind of counting from the Water Resources Fund. Again, whatever the amount should be, we agree that it should be kind of new money. And despite the restoration efforts, we believe this consent order really is the best opportunity to get Virginia-specific money. We understand there's a criminal settlement and other matters, but this is really the best source to get money focused to Virginia localities of the city of Danville. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
That's it.
Dean, would you like to respond to some of those comments, please?
One of them in particular, I refer to everybody that I work with as colleagues, including the SCLC. And so I try to keep enforcement out of an adversarial tone so that we can represent the best interests of both the agency and the Commonwealth. There were a number of comments that were made. Let me just follow up on the double counting. The Water Resources Fund, I know, has been a little, grabbed a little bit of attention because it's Duke's fund that they initiated. And to the extent that my understanding from Duke of that fund is that that initial $10 million was a floor and not a ceiling, more money can come in there. We saw the Water Resources Fund actually as being somewhat attractive because there was accountability, there was representation there, and there was a system, a funding mechanism for money to flow into, whether it's for a North Carolina project or Virginia project, whatever. It was just a way to continue administering that money. And we needed vehicles to do that. Going back to, I think, what it sounds to me to be a key concern about, right? We talked about the confusion about, between criminal, civil, different jurisdictions, what those jurisdictions are representing. When it goes directly to the state water control law and the criteria that we apply, SCLC did state that correctly. To the extent that it's just statutory criteria, when it comes to the gravity of the offense, the economic benefit and so forth. We're also required to apply our guidance in Chapter 4 of our enforcement manual. It's fairly well defined in terms of how we go about these penalties. We came up with a penalty matrix, a methodology through our worksheets and everything that we do. And yes, there's a number of days that's employed in that, but it has to be backed up by facts. There's a lot of speculation, whether it be by Mr. Lindley's report on natural resource damages, speculation on what the criminal plea is about, or speculation on North Carolina's violation for groundwater, which is subject to an appeal. But at the end of the day, the way we apply our authority, I believe it's responsible, and I think that it's defensible because we base it on the facts that are before us. There's a lot that we know about what happened on the Dan River as a result of the spill, but there's also a lot that we don't know, and that's why we have continued monitoring. To the extent that some of that monitoring is not providing the type of technical evidentiary foundation for us to move forward with a higher penalty, we don't have that level of support. The data hasn't panned out for us to go further with a penalty figure. If we could, we would have. So at the end of the day, what I would leave with you on that question is that we're operating off of a set of facts that we have confidence in order to present a consent order for you that we believe is defensible and fair.
Any question from the board?
Oh, you go ahead.
Go ahead.
I have a question after you do.
This may have been answered in the material that we were emailed, but how exactly was the penalty calculated?
I'm going to ask Kathleen to step up real quick because she ran through that methodology for us in coming up with the calculation worksheet.
Okay.
It's based on $32,500 per day per violation. Question being how long time period you cover. And we did not cover the entire time period from the date of the spill until the date of this order.
Is the violation not still ongoing?
Depends on what violation you're dealing with. If you're talking about the discharge, that's over. If you're talking about impairment of water quality standards, that's over. If you're talking about deposition of solids on the river bottom, depending on which area of the river you're talking about, they may or may not still be there. So there's a degree of uncertainty that occurs.
Is it, so what you were saying is that you don't believe that any further studies in the future would better define the,
It may, but I'm saying it's uncertain at this point.
No, that's true. I think what I was mentioning before is consistent with that. We're going to continue to monitor. And for purposes of natural resource damage, if that monitoring becomes really important, but under the state water control law, unless we've got some impairment that we can look at specifically, okay, we've got uncertainty there. At some point, we end up having to look at where we're at, what we know, what we think we're going to get in addition, and determine whether or not we need to close it out.
and that includes, in your decision making, and maybe it was too soon to sit down, sorry, but I'm not sure. No, just saying. Was that also a consideration of the criminal outcome? I mean, is that part of the determination of $32,500 per day? Is that modified in any way if there is a criminal?
What I think is being implied by that is that when you look at just the severity of it, the gravity of it, that somebody else has a criminal action, Department of Justice. Okay, in our statutory authority, it doesn't tell us to consider a criminal action in order to compound what we have as part of our statutory authority. It doesn't direct us to do that. And in our guidance, it doesn't go that far. That's why you have a criminal action. We're civil.
And Virginia doesn't have the capability of having a criminal action?
I'm not DEQ. I'm not a prosecutor. Typically, that's reserved for the Commonwealth's attorneys and the Attorney General's office.
So there is not that going on.
David?
Mr. Chairman, David Grants from the Attorney General's office. The state water control law does in fact have provisions for criminal prosecution that allow for additional penalties to be brought against the person who's in violation. It's my view that such action would be brought by the Commonwealth Attorney or my office at the request of the Governor.